Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Dude, the yellow and
Don't tell
red.
me you have these two?
I had those two. I'm
Bro.
not even making this up. Absolutely. I was probably 5, 6 years old.
These came. I just ran all the way outside. I brought them down to my parents' house today. My parents live down the street.
Those might have been mine. Those came from Utah. Did you say they came from Utah?
Yes.
Those
These
might have
might
been
be
mine,
yours.
Shaun.
Hey, if that's the case, I'll give them to you.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I am Shaun D. Nelson, that love sack guy. This podcast is something that you won't get anywhere else. It's just me sitting down, talking to experts, famous people each week to help you avoid some of the same mistakes we've all made in life and business. In my case, over, 25 years at least. No advertisers on this podcast on purpose. Just 100% unique content each week centered around a single Shawnism meant to extract very different conversations from these very successful people. If you are enjoying it, please share it. Give it a 5-star rating on your podcast platform. It is so appreciated. Thank you very much. Sincerely, no joke. This week's topic, living well takes work. Okay. This is all the shiny, beautiful people on social media, in the press, having success looks so easy. They make it look easy because that's what pros do. But behind the scenes, I promise it is freaking hard. And we're going to dive into that with a guest that has lived by this Shawnism. He's continuing to reap the benefits of putting in the work. His name is Shaun Murray, 3-time world champion wakeboarder, international superstar. In this pod, we're going to talk about his faith, his eternal perspective, which is a crucial piece of living a good life, the value of living a conduit life, not a contained life, why his mantra, do now well, has led him to living the life he's always dreamed of. And we get the real story behind one of Shaun's craziest stunts he's ever performed in his life, wakeboarding from an airplane. This is a great chat with a man who has proved that living good takes work and the benefits can last a lifetime. I think you're going to love it. Check it out. Our guest today is not only a world champion in the world of wakeboarding, but he's a living legend, someone whose name is synonymous with pushing the limits, taking risks, staying true to his roots. He's a pioneer in the water sports world, having won multiple world championships and every accolade imaginable. As a wakeboarder myself, since the sport began in the 90s, I can only explain his fame in that realm as this is like the Michael Jordan of wakeboarding. I mean, the wakeboarding video game of all time, made for PS2 and Xbox, not to date him, was named after this guy. Okay, so today we're going to talk more than just water sports. We're going to talk about life and lessons and my latest Shawnism, living good takes work. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the pod, the Shaun Murray.
Hey, thanks for having me, Shaun. And looking forward to it.
So good. So good. We actually tried to do this in person in Orlando and got blown up 6 different ways and ended up just having dinner together, which was amazing.
That was great.
So it's great to catch up again. Glad that you're back from the first stint, I guess, of the Boat Show Tour 2025.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, so I'm really excited. So obviously, Shaun Murray, like top wakeboarder of our generation. We could talk water sports all day. I mean, I grew up when I was 17. I bought an old Glastron and put like the plumber's pipe, like a 10-foot plumber's pipe in the floor, strapped it down with 4, cinch straps, and we'd wakeboard off of our quote unquote tower on like our Neptune board with phasers. And I mean, this was like or bungee bindings. Like I was early in the sport. And so venerated, obviously, you and your whole crew that you came up with wakeboarding, the Pro Wakeboard Tour, so much so that when Lovesac finally came around years later, we sponsored the Pro Wakeboard Tour. And, I don't think we ever properly met back then, but I was on the tour. I got to go to some of the stops, see you, meet you, all the other pro wakeboarders, and just be around it. And it was just so cool as a fan.
And I got a couple of love sacks at the end of the tour, and I had them for a really long time. They were a staple in my wakeboard camp that I started with my buddy back in the day. So
how cool is that? I didn't even know that.
yeah,
You
they
just
were
drag them out
there.
on the lawn or something, or on the dock and have them there.
No, we literally had we had a little couch and one on the other side, and they were massive ones, because they were there at the site. But I've known the name for a long time, and it was actually pretty much the coolest booth back in the day, because that's when around that time is when the video game eventually came around in 2003, and they would have some of those sacks there for us to kind of sit in when they still had some. And so yeah, it's been around. People ask like how long you've been wakeboarding for, and so I asked if they know what VHS is, and that kind of dates me.
That's awesome. VHS. Yeah, it's crazy. So what'll be fun about this conversation is being that you're this action sports celebrity, and of course you've had a bazillion conversation about boats and wakeboarding. We'll probably end up touching a little bit on that, but I really wanted to talk with you about a subject that you may not get as much time to talk about in some of the formats that you're often interviewed in. And it's because I've observed you on social media, having been a fan forever, having been connected to this industry forever. And I believe, and I don't know this to be true for sure, but I believe that, you've discovered along the way something that I've also kind of like uncovered and boiled down in the Shawnism, that, it's one thing to have a house on a lake with a dock and be out there with a, X $100,000 boat that you can take at any time and wakeboard anytime in the beautiful weather of Orlando, and have a ripped body, Ninja Warrior finalist, beautiful wife, beautiful daughters, this fantastic life as a action sports celebrity, but living good and showing up with a great life on social media, the things that people perceive. Living good takes work. It doesn't just happen because you were successful before. It doesn't just happen because you made some money and life's easy. Like living good, and we can take that any way you want to take it. It takes work. And so I just wanted, when you heard this topic and thought about it as it reflects on your life, what was the first thing that came to mind?
Do now well. Okay? And it sounds weird, and it sounds grammatically almost incorrect, because most people say, well, do well now, but it's do now well. That's the first thing that I thought of, because I actually kind of talk about this and even speak on this subject. And so when I heard like this was where we were going to potentially go, I was like, this is great, because it is truly how I try to live, because our days are made up of multiple decisions.
Yeah.
Right. And so those decisions then will steer us throughout the day.
Yeah.
And so what do now well means to me is whatever I'm doing right now, do it well. And that means like, if I'm driving, drive well. That doesn't mean scroll and try to multitask when, you get to a stop.
No.
It's tough, right? It's tough. It's tough. And sometimes I'll justify, be like, okay, I just need to check or whatever. But if it's talking to someone, if it's listening to someone, even if it's scrolling on Instagram, am I doing that well? Because sometimes there's a point that you've all of a sudden gone too far into those activities that we justify. And it's okay. Like, my life is built upon social media in a sense, but even scrolling Instagram, are you doing that well? Are you waking up well?
I like that.
Are you going to sleep well? Whatever it is that you're doing at that moment. And it helps me, in a sense, evaluate decisions. And I try to give myself grace, but
what do you mean by that? You try to give yourself grace?
Give myself grace, meaning like, okay, I try to stay active with working out. And there's days where it's just like, you know what? I don't feel well, or I don't feel good, or sometimes it's just I don't feel motivated. And so you have to make that decision, like, do I need to push through this, or is this my body saying to take it easy for a minute? And so sometimes it can be us trying to justify just being like, I don't want to do
You're
it.
right.
um,
I did
but
that last night with the cold plunge. I was just like,
oh,
no, no.
that's the perfect where it's like, yeah. But yeah, that's essentially what it is like it's those micro decisions that turn into macro results. Um, and it's creating those habits. And I think a lot of it has to do with being uncomfortable. And I, we talked about this a little bit while we were at dinner, and I think so much of our lives are built around comfort, and that's okay. There is a time for me to sit on my couch, and literally on the other side of this wall downstairs, like
Your
I've got,
Sactionals.
I've got my Sactionals, and honestly, I'm probably spending more time on the couch watching movies now just because of Stealth Tech. And
I
so thank you
apologize.
for that. Like, no joke, this is not an ad. I'm telling you, like, so there's a time. And so that allows me, when I'm sitting there, I'm definitely doing that well. Um, but it's to say, like, it's those decisions that can carry over into the habits of I don't know. What is it? 2 weeks of doing something consistently to turn it into a habit. And I still to this day try to create new beneficial habits. But to finish that thought, it's about being sometimes uncomfortable. Getting in the cold plunge is very uncomfortable. But
Yes.
I think that one of the best things for our mental health is when we push ourselves to the point where our body says, whatever you're doing right now, stop. I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. Whether that's running a little faster or a little farther, or hanging onto a bar a little longer, or getting into the water when it's a little too cold, or staying in it a little longer. When our body says, whatever you're doing, stop, and you say, no, I got more. And I believe that when we do that, when we push through that, that's where I think we level up and we're in a much better headspace.
Well, I'm going to, first of all, you've thrown out a dozen nuggets that
Sorry,
we can,
I went
no,
too far.
it's perfect. A dozen nuggets we can double click on. Um, but just on that last bit, I'm going to repeat something that my good friend Joe, the founder of Spartan Races, Joe DeSanto shared with me, and I've seen it since on different reels and whatnot. There is a part of our brain that is devoted to persistence, and in fact, when we choose to do things that we don't want to do specifically, and we make the choice to put, like you just said, push through and do those things, or do them for longer, or do them at all, or see
Mm-hmm.
them through to the end, that part of the brain grows. And in fact, in people that have very bad life habits, people that you know are in a bad physical state in various ways, and and in general, what the world would call develop really bad habits, that part of the brain is usually smaller. It's atrophied, and just like any muscle, it's able to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the let's call them the wrinkles in the brain there, the channels, the neurons tracking in that part of the brain grow longer every time we push through
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And so, look, you may be a pro wakeboarder, but that cold plunge, besides just the, of course, physical recovery and things like that benefits, that cold plunge is relevant. That maybe uh, the patience you exercise with your children is relevant. Anytime we can push through something that is difficult or challenging mentally and physically, that part of the brain grows, and it's a physiological fact.
Hmm. That,
So, something else you said that I'd want to kind of, so first of all, I love your phrase, do now well. This idea of being present has come up now so many times on this podcast, almost under any Shawnism somehow. And I draw this connection because I think it's important to recognize, like, I have interviewed and spoken with some of the most successful people on earth in many different realms: pro athletes, entrepreneurs, business people, scientists. And in so many of these conversations, being present, like you said, doing the present well has come up as a recurring theme. And I think it's so important for people like me. So I am a tragic introspector. I don't know the right way to say it. Like I'm constantly in my own head. I'm thinking about, a new concept. I'm thinking about a love sack thing. I'm thinking about the next thing. I'm thinking about this. And I miss so much of life.
Mm.
And John Mackey said it really well to me. He's the founder of Whole Foods on one of these conversations. He said, look, the past is gone and the future doesn't exist. The only thing that is real is the present.
Mm-hmm.
And in as much as surely there's a time for planning and a time for scheming and thinking and imagining, I struggle, admittedly, in doing now well. And that's the reason I wanted to unpack this,
Mm.
because I think that it is one of the secrets to a life well lived and enjoyed.
100%. And I too am there, where I have to get myself to slow down because sometimes it's what wakes you up in the middle of the night in your brain. You're like, no, not now. That is not how I'm going to sleep well right now. But sometimes it gets your feet moving and it gets you excited to get going into the day. But there is that line that we can cross where we are trying to grow, but not be in the moment. And one of the most tragic places is with our family.
Yeah.
Because like of all the people that grow up fast in front of our eyes, are like our own kids.
It's the worst.
And so I think that's where I try to hold myself the most accountable, but it's where it's the most visible, I think is what you're also saying, like where you're just like, if you're going to hone in on it somewhere, hone in on it there first.
It's great advice. So, let's say we all agree that we should do now well. We should be more present. We should be more focused on what's in front of us and engaged. I love that you even brought up scrolling Instagram. If you're going to do that, do it well. If you're going to watch a movie, watch it on stealth tech. Get the full effect. Okay,
Right.
whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, but now how? Do you have any good strategies or tips or tricks to?
Um, because we were just talking about our families and something that somebody told me years ago before I had kids, and I really try to practice it to this day, is if I've been gone and I'm coming home, even if it's I like left the house for the day and I'm seeing them at the end of the day and coming back in, and if I'm driving in, um, come in empty-handed, because a lot of times, like I try to be efficient with every step of my day, carrying the most things from one point A to point B and whatever. And so when you come in from the vehicle, you're going to probably have things that just came home with you, you brought home, whatever. And we tend to want to multitask and bring those in and say hi to the family. But what they pointed out was you can't pick up your kids, you can't hug your wife, you're holding things, and those things can seem like a priority to them. And so come in empty-handed so that you can go in and physically hug people, and then even ask them to participate. And hey, can you help me bring things in?
I love that. And by the way, I think that beyond the, like you said, being able to invite them to help you carry stuff in maybe or whatever, I'm guessing that because that stuck with you and you've probably practiced it, it's occurred to you is because there's these moments where you're transitioning, right? You're coming out of the car, you're going through that door in the garage or whatever. And those moments are then easy to tie to a learned behavior like what you're describing. And an example of this in a different world was I was once in one of the many bazillion business leadership books that I read. It said, look, as a CEO or as a leader, never leave your office, vexed or angry or like upset in any way. And I developed, because people just from your mood can infect a whole bunch of people's, and they're also watching sometimes a leader and they're looking for cues of, business is not looking so good. So I developed the same kind of muscle memory around just crossing a threshold. And it's funny because it happens to me at home. Just crossing a threshold, I smile because it's like a learned behavior. You can say, well, that's kind of fake, but honestly, it's better than accidentally looking preoccupied or angry to people who might misread some other look. What's my point? My point is, I'm guessing, Shaun, that as you've practiced coming in empty-handed, as a habit, just the act of, let's say, putting something down and showing up that way, then puts you in a mode where you're not accidentally neglecting the people that matter most in those moments that we have with them that are actually kind of precious and few sometimes.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. It's been ingrained in me to where sometimes I don't know if they are home, or to make my excuse, I'll come in like holding something, and then before I turn, I can hear them before I turn the corner. I set things down, so I'm like,
Oh,
I'll attend to that stuff in a little bit. So, um, yeah, it just makes you aware of what's important, and I'm not going to say
yeah.
that I'm firing on all cylinders with that, but it's giving myself and maybe you something to think about it, and it's kind of a fun thing to do because both sides benefit.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that though. When you cross that threshold, the fact that you're basically like walking almost through like, it sounds weird, but almost like an energy force of just it like wiping you clean, and you're like, okay, I'm in a new environment. I don't
Yeah.
have to.
Even if I'm in a bad mood. And
Yeah.
I laugh at myself because I find myself doing it, like even if my mind is somewhere else, but I think it's become kind of a good habit. And it's just a little thing. And that's why I loved what you shared. Like that's a little thing, right? Put your things down and come in empty handed. The act of that muscle memory can have profound effects because, you know, the time that we get with our family is often at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And if we squander that, then what do we even get?
Hmm.
You know, besides some vacations and some, you know, very explicit times. So that's, you know, this is what this Shawnism is all about. Living good, living well takes work. You know, it doesn't just happen because you're a successful person or, you know, you've had some success. It's the opposite. You've had success because you've put in the work. And that applies even to everyday life. And it's so easy in this day and age, like with Instagram or TikTok or social media, YouTube, to be deceived into thinking that like some people just have it together, because it's not that simple. Those people, even to put out that point of view on those social media channels, have put in work, like you know as well as I do. Like this stuff, even it's work, like it, and it never sleeps. And so, even projecting a life that looks good from the outside, let alone actually living one, takes work. And I just think if you're unwilling to do the work, if you're unwilling to make those hard choices, you're going to have a hard time feeling like you're living a good life.
Hmm. No, absolutely. It takes intentionality, but I heard, and this comes back to the do now well, but Mike Rowe, Dirty
Yeah.
Jobs guy, Ford guy, I heard him speak on people pursuing their passions, and he said, and I'm going to misquote him, but I'll try to get the right concept. But he said, I disagree where people say to follow your passion and basically find a career that's in your passion. You'll never work a day in your life. He says, I actually disagree. I say bring passion to whatever you do.
Hmm.
That's where you'll find fulfillment. And I do think that is very true. And that comes back to like the do now well. If you learn to make that your lifestyle, um, and what you kind of fall back to, like your foundation, then I think it leads you in that direction. Like I think if you're just aware of it. So I try to continue. Like I'm like going through most days, going, all right, am I doing now well? Am I
That's
am I
great.
bringing passion to this moment right now?
That's great. And one other, you know, thing as it relates to this topic, you know, especially as we consider like it's kind of a bummer message, you know, like all of this work, this talk of work, this talk of discipline, this talk of doing hard things. And I think part of the reason, I mean, obviously it's a bummer because as human beings, we love leisure, we love pleasure, we love ease. Our body, our mind often craves it. So it seems so at odds with this, you know, imagined wonderful life that we want to have, which somehow results in ease and pleasure. And, you know, it's like this weird relationship. But one of the things that I love about watching a pro like you in their element. So like if I go wakeboarding with Shaun Murray, he's gonna like pop out, he's gonna go outside, he's gonna pop off the wake, he's gonna get like, 10 feet of air and land gently on the other side, having spun or flipped. And then you're gonna see me go. And I'm gonna go way outside in the flats, and I'm gonna come whipping in at like 100 miles an hour, and I'm gonna maybe get lucky and land something on the other side, or maybe break a rib, without sufficient pop to pull the Rayleigh, the one trick that I have. What's my point? People that do it well make it look easy, whatever it is. And that's part of the brilliance of doing it well, whatever it is. So if we're talking about living life, you're going to look at someone like Shaun Murray. You're going to look at, your favorite influencer on social media. You're going to look at, whoever it is you look up to on whatever platform they're visible to you on, and it's going to look easy. And you're going to say, man, like if only I had their luck, their background, their money, because look how easy that is. Look how, of course, Shaun Murray is ripped. He's a professional wakeboarder. But by the way, I know plenty of athletes from your vintage that don't look like you today, right? Like you've had the discipline. And so nothing's easy. It appears easy because that's part of the magic of being a pro. And by the way, I encourage you, and I'm speaking to anyone, whatever it is that you do, like for me, I try not to show up on social media with, all of the things that stress me out as a CEO of a public company, all the people breathing down my neck, the pressures of the macro economy, tariffs, who knows what. And I try to make my life look, pretty easy, because in the end, if I'm trying to grow my social media and increase our reach so I can put more stealth tech in people's homes and make families' lives more comfortable together and all those good things, I have to make it look easy because that's what people want to see. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that I can't be authentic and honest and vulnerable at times. I will. But in the end, no one wants to see endless whining. No one wants to hear about my problems. They want to, they want to see something fun and interesting if they do take the time, as you said, to scroll on social media, especially if they're trying to do it well. So that's what I deliver. Mostly the good stuff. Mm-hmm. And I try to make it look easy. But it's not easy.
Yeah. Life edited. Yeah.
Yep. And if you think it is, you're mistaken. It just appears that way because many of us are trying, if I'm being honest, to make it appear that way, because that's the most desirable kind of content if we want to get crass with it. So, just don't be fooled. It's important that you can be entertained. It's important, like you said, you give yourself grace. It's okay to scroll some social media if you're into it, if you enjoy it. Try not to get sucked down rabbit holes that will degrade your spirit, your soul, your energy. If you find yourself becoming negative or otherwise distracted by certain content. But hey, if you're going to do it well. I love that. Put in the work to have a little bit of discipline, even in your scrolling habits. But don't be conned by it either. Mm-hmm. Even from people like you and me.
Well, I think just on the simple fact that I want to come back, you're talking about energy. Like I even wrote a note down because that's what this is all about. But the simple fact that anything in life that carries value is generally going to be acquired or obtained or crossed the line with perseverance and, like we talked about, discomfort. So we talk about like, why do now well? Well, so I could be successful. Why be successful? Well, the things that in life and two kind of easy to understand things are being physically fit or nutritionally fit. Both of those things are probably going to take some things that to get going is difficult. Like to get yourself motivated to go to the gym one time or 7 times, whatever it is, like it takes a little bit to get that train going. And it's to say that once you're going, then like the best part about being at the gym is once you're going. And then it's once you leave, because then that's going to feed into the rest of your life. And generally that sometimes will also make you go, all right, if I'm going to take the time to do that, well, then I'm not going to put this nasty stuff into my body, because I'm not going to be able to then work out as hard as I am. And like, so it kind of snowballs on itself.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
and
a
so,
virtuous cycle, right? Like I often feel that way. I'll intermittent fast. And then the last thing I want to do, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a moment where I want to just shove stuff down
yeah,
my gullet, but
yeah,
I also kind of like don't, because it'd be like wasting the last, whatever,
yep,
22 hours that I
yep,
put in with a little bit of discipline,
yep,
right? To get to here. And so I'll think twice.
yep.
Where, by the way, if I'm eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's more likely I'll eat crappy in all three.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then that's the fueling yourselves with the wrong things. And so even like, truthfully, some of the best foods for us don't taste that great, but I just listened to this other message the other day about like how our taste buds are trained and we can retrain them. And it is true. Like you can start eating better and like it can start tasting better. But like I said, the things that carry value are going to have some sort of um, discomfort or some place that you need to have perseverance to push through. And so that's why it's just to say, okay, if I want something that has a benefit on the other side, it's going to take that long-term push through, but done in short-term incremental amounts.
Yeah, another guest on this pod said it in a great way. He said, everything you want is on the other side of something hard.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, those who are really good at achieving in life can also make it look easy. And that's my point
Mm-hmm.
with this whole Shawnism, is that living good takes work, and it won't always appear that way. It'll appear as if someone's lucky. It'll appear as if someone's just born into wealth. And by the way, someone can be born into wealth. That, to me, I mean, I really am thinking hard about, even if I get so lucky as to, let's say, exit this life with millions of dollars. And it's possible, obviously, with a company like Lovesac and, growing and things like that. I don't know that I want to hobble, I'll say it that way, hobble my children by bequeathing on them any amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, like, I feel like every desirable trait or discipline that I have has come by earning it the hard way,
Mm-hmm.
coming up the hard way. So why would I want to rob them of that? And that's a tough one. And I'm not saying that
And that's
I'm,
the thing is
I
like the
haven't,
kids, like if your kids are watching this, like they would be like, well, Dad, you're, robbing us of the money. But it's not like what you're saying is learning the value in life and what it takes to obtain, but more importantly, to create moments like with their own families as they go out there.
and look, it's simple. If everything that I am or have has come from the struggle to get there, not the getting there, but the struggle to get there, why would you ever want to rob your children of that opportunity? I mean, your own children. I think it's one of them. It scares me. And I haven't made my final decisions on exactly how I'm going to think about that. I haven't made it to the end. I'm still in the hunt. I'm still in the struggle. Lovesac is a public company. We are competing in a very competitive world. There are all kinds of, macro meteors being thrown at us all the time, out in the world of competition, and the jury's out. It's not like I've just taken a big check and exited. I am here still fighting, trying to grow, trying to provide jobs, trying to provide opportunity, trying to generate wealth for many people at this simultaneously. And so I don't know how it's going to end, but I do think a lot about that. And it makes me really, I'm being serious. Like, it makes me really think twice about robbing my kids of the opportunity to struggle their own way to success, because that's the part of it that is the most meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the rewards. It's the character that's built in through the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I've learned like the decision that I just recently made to leave Nautique after 25 years. Like,
Let's explain that. So if you're not
um,
in the water sports industry, Shaun Murray is like spokesperson for the most expensive, most high end, most credible whatever boat brand in the market. He's been a team rider for them for what, 20 years? I
25.
mean, 25 years. You and
Yeah.
me, we are like parallel, strange paths.
Yeah.
Um,
Wild. Wild. So I yeah, I decided to step away. And there was not because there's any bad blood. I still like some of my best friends are at that company, still
yeah.
are. And like I just, called the president the other day just to chat and, like he's my age, we're friends and just so point being it wasn't because of any bad blood. It was really because I saw opportunities in the world were changing between the social media avenue that I've gone down and the just kind of like my position in the sport. I've been doing it professionally for 30 years. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm seeing this differently. And so they gave me a contract and it was a great offer, and it wasn't like anything, where they're trying to phase me out. It
Free
was,
boat,
yeah. So
you know,
yeah,
for a professional wakeboarder that continues, by the way, to coach other wakeboarders, like that's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty important element to your life.
yeah. And currently like I don't have a boat down at my dock. And it's weird because for 30 years I've had one down there.
Hmm.
Or, for my whole life, we moved from California to St. Louis as a kid. And ever since I was 12 years old, I've always had a boat to go out on.
Wow.
I still have neighbors' boats and friends' boats, and people
You
are
got
still
lots of friends in Orlando. Let's be honest.
they're still offering me to use boats. But um, to the point is what I was saying is that I see the opportunity to use my social media platform to engage more with other boat companies to connect more people with different ways of getting out on the water. That's one of the biggest reasons I did it, and it's put me in a place where I have had to go. All right, now it's up to me, and it's in like you're saying that struggle of all right, I struggled with the decision and then it's like all right, now I'm going to figure out what does it look like to transition into an influencer, and
Hmm.
having a rate sheet and having these tiny URL, like all of these things like that come along with it that I've just kind of organically learned. But it's put me in a place where I'm in here thinking, in this chair where I'm like, okay, how do I go about this? What do I do? And I don't try to overthink, I'm not going to not do that well. Like I try to just be efficient. Um, but I created this video to explain to the industry like what I was doing. And um, it was received really well. Some people were kind of confused. They're like, "Wait, you're leaving Nautique? You're going to another brand?" I was like, "No, I'm non-exclusive." So then I can receive emails from other companies who want to work for me, and immediately they started coming in. And
That's cool.
it was like this moment of all right, I'm putting it out there.
I
Like
mean,
I
like in your world, and this is not fair because there's only one Michael Jordan, but I'll use that analogy anyway. Like imagine, you know, MJ walking away from Nike or even Air Jordan to say, "Hey, I just want to be able to do honest reviews of all the sneakers."
mm,
Because obviously my opinion matters. I'm speaking for Shaun Murray, the most venerated pro wakeboarder. My opinion matters, and now I can give you an unbiased and uh, honest opinion and ratings on all these different sneakers. In your case, boats. And so I think that, wow, that's a bold choice. It's a brave choice. You got to walk away from money. You got to walk away from a sure thing to take, like, but you're following your instinct. And again, like, you make it look easy, right? You made the video, you said what you said, people had whatever take they had. But I can only imagine, what it feels like to walk away from a sure thing and kind of step out into the dark, but it's your instinct that's driving you, right? But that takes work. Like the easier thing to do might have been to make the default choice.
yeah, it was. Part of me struggled with that. I was like, look, what this looks like if you just do the same thing. You can continue this relationship. You could probably retire with a good relationship with them and get a boat and like you can just ride this out. But I honestly just kind of felt like I was on this kind of a skating rink that everybody was kind of just doing the same lap every year, and with little changes here and there. And I was like, I think I see a different rink or skate park over here in this area that I think it exists, but I'm not sure because it hasn't been done before. People have done it in other industries, but not in this way. Just because nobody's ever really stepped back and looked at it this way. Like everybody
Yeah.
just wants to get the big contract, and if you get to Nautique as like if you make it on that team, it's like, dude, you've made it. Like, and so for me, it was weird for me to start thinking that, but I couldn't stop thinking that.
Yeah.
My wheels just got going.
That's awesome. Well, let's go back for a second just to shift gears and explore a different time in your life. So you're back on the pro wakeboard tour.
Mm.
You're in your maybe early 20s or somewhere in there. I don't know. What is just, here you are, top of your game, pro athlete. You have your own video game on all the platforms. I mean, you're like the Tony Hawk of this sport, the Michael's, whatever. What is like the dumbest, craziest, memory from that period of time when you were at the peak of your career as the pro athlete icon of your time?
Oh gosh, I did lots of dumb things.
All right.
I
Well,
mean,
just pick one. Don't think too hard. Don't think
crazy,
too hard.
crazy and dumb is like a blurry line, though, right?
All
And
right.
successful, like they're all like it's kind of a three. It's like a braid.
I want to hear something that you don't always get the chance to, something from the something
Um,
from the X Files.
something that my wife my wife said, if you ever do that again, don't come home.
Okay.
Okay, but if I had the chance, I would probably do it again.
Oh, now I have to hear.
like like no joke, I would probably do it if you invited me to do it. Um, I and it was on too small of a lake that I did it. I wakeboarded from an airplane.
Oh, wow.
And it's been done before where somebody, like, in fact, I saw this guy, I think he was like barefooting from this plane. And I was like, I know that pilot. I know the guy who has that plane. And so I happened to run into him, and I was like, hey, I saw where you pulled that barefooter, and I want to wakeboard from your plane. And he's like, all right. Okay. So we happened to be shooting this video called Rewritten. And
Uh-huh.
it was a Team Hyperlight video. It was back when Hyperlight and Ronex split. And so it was like we were rewriting the script of what was going on with Team Hyperlight. And
Wow.
it's one of the best intros of that video. And so while we were shooting, we were down in just south of Orlando at my buddy's small lake. The reason I say it's small kind of plays in here in a second. I'll try to make it quick. But we were out wakeboarding on this little lake, and I got a call from him early morning. He's like, hey, I heard you're in our area. Can I fly in to meet you? I
Yeah.
said, yeah, absolutely. And so he shows up, and he has this thing called a trick release, which is used for trick skiing when the people are doing the there's literally a time they put their foot in the rope so that they can then do tricks with one foot in the rope and one foot on a ski. And they
Right.
call it the toe hold. So it's when you need to pull someone free of the line. So he puts this on the bottom of his airplane so that he can hook my rope. And if he needs to, he can just is just a little rope sitting in his lap, and he can just pull this thing. So that's my lifeline. So he gets me going down the lake, and he kind of gets up, and I'm kind of like just dragging. And he told me he was doing like 50, 60 knots,
Yeah.
which is pretty fast. Like with miles an hour, it translates to, I don't know, it's faster than you want to be bouncing around on your back.
Yeah. No kidding.
And so we stop, and he comes back, like he has to go up. It's a circle lake, and then he only has so much time before he's got to either bail out or get back down and go. So it was like pretty small. So he comes around, I go, hey, get me off the water. And he's like, well, you want to fly? I was like, yeah, like get me up. Like,
And you're
let's
just
go.
hanging by your
Yeah.
hands.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, this is going to be like, it's going to be tight. And I
Wait,
don't know
but
if
hold on, back up. How are you getting started from stop? Or are you
sitting in the water, like it's a boat. And he would just start the engine, and I'm back there and just getting blasted.
okay? So he's
Oh,
taking
sorry.
off.
There's a float plane. a float plane.
Yeah, float plane, and he's
Yeah.
taking off from stopped,
Yes.
and you're just hanging on. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So he's just he gets going, and it's just like you're getting blasted, just
Uh,
by this engine, and so he gets going, and then that's where I'm just like, I hope he gets me up, and he goes straight up, like, and all of a sudden I'm just dangling,
oh my gosh.
and like at that point I'm just like
With
straight.
a board on your feet.
Yeah, board on my feet. And you can see this. This is on YouTube. And so now I'm just kind of spinning. And I'm just like, it was amazing. Like it was amazing, but I was like out of control. And now because it's a small lake, he has to start setting me down
Well, that's
quickly.
terrifying.
And so I'm like spinning and I'm like, oh, I hope I don't catch a back edge. Like we're going really fast right now.
Yeah, you're
Like it
gonna
would just straight knock me out. It might kill me. And so I'm telling you, it was probably maybe 20 feet before we touched down. I happened to grab the air with my board and I'm just
yeah.
steering like on the wind just before I hit, and I put it down just enough, kind of caught my edge, tumbled.
Oh,
I was wearing a helmet. I don't know if it helped or hurt, but I had a headache. But at that, I was like, I got on the boat
you
just like that
survived.
was amazing. And I called my wife. I'm driving home, and I was like, I did this,
Oh
and she's like, and he had you on the trick release? I was like, yeah, if you pulled me, I would have died. And she goes, you do that again, don't ever come home.
gosh,
So, but like I said, I might do that again.
that is
Yeah.
terrifying.
I
I
grabbed
can't.
onto a helicopter skid at 1.2 and got pulled up about 200 feet. That one was dumb, but I'll save you that story for another time.
No, that's insane. That's cool, man. I mean, that's what's awesome. I've enjoyed about talking to so many different people that are really at the pinnacle of anything. Is that, their sport aside, they've had all these crazy experiences, things they've done, things that no one else has ever done, like you have. And yet, you come home and just like me, you're raising three daughters. In fact, our daughters are like the same age, roughly. So I kind of know where you're at in life. I know some of the things you're dealing with and going through. I think it's so cool that you've been taking your oldest, I think, with you to some of these boat shows. Is like take your daughter to
My
work.
middle, yeah, we just got home. My middle daughter, Presley, we just went on the road.
Yeah, or your middle. Yeah, that's so cool. And I need, and that's what's so great. The thing I love about people like you that are willing to put your life out there on social media. I mean, yes, obviously you can find your way to exposure and even find ways to monetize it in different ways. And that's awesome that opportunity is available to you and to really anyone. But when you have someone like you that forget wakeboarding, you've mastered something in life, and then you've obviously applied some of that, some of those same principles to trying to master life, like the raising of kids, or just the way you live day to day. And you're willing to share that, and that's the beautiful thing. There's so much ugliness on social media and so many bad realm things that we can be exposed to, but at the same time there's so much available to us, and that's really the spirit of this conversation, even the podcast in general, right? I don't have any advertisers. I'm just talking to people like you that are at the top of their game and are willing to share things that to you now have just become habits, or just kind of like the way you live or the way you are. But it really is such a good example to all of us, in ways that we can try to do it better, because at least, and you and I are both religious. So I think both of us believe, we're people of faith. We believe in God. We believe in eternity. And for me anyway, and, I don't avoid these conversations. I don't make the podcast all about it, but how does your eternal perspective, Shaun? Because, you're seen as a pro athlete. You're seen as like, this ripped guy, ninja warrior, content creator. How does your eternal perspective or your faith affect your ability to show up and, as we say, live good?
I think perspective, that, like, and I'm kind of answering your question a little bit with a question, but the perspective of what matters, um, and yeah, that eternal perspective, because we can get so caught up in these decisions. Like I'm in the middle of one right now. And like literally something sitting here that,
Mm.
that perspective of where we can really let that kind of get the best of us, or even play with our emotions, or play with our I don't want to say ethics. We're not going to change our ethics, but sometimes we might bend ourselves or our ideologies a little bit, for what we think might be a gain. But it's to say that if you step back and look at things from an eternal perspective, you go, okay, I see where I need to go. I see what I
Mm.
need to do now. I see how much I don't need to focus on this, or even need to think about it right now. Um, so I would say that's one of the biggest things, is that perspective of weight, that we can place upon things. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think I get asked all the time, when you look at, like, let's talk about Lovesac for a second. When you look at a company like Lovesac, we've been on like a 30% compounded average growth rate for like the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years combined. So we've experienced tremendous growth. We came public in 2018, about 100 million in sales. We've grown it to, roughly 700 and still growing. What's my point? I get asked about, like, what do you attribute that to fundamentally? And of course, there are forces out there, right product, right place, right time, all that sort of thing. But also fundamentally, it comes back to having a very well considered, well trafficked purpose, mission, vision, values, especially the values. And that makes decision making so easy.
mhm,
When you know what your strategy is, when you know what you stand for, most decisions are just kind of obvious. Oh, well, we're not going to do that. It's tempting. Like, oh, you could make so much money by just make this little product, put your logo on it, and sell it into Costco or something. That's that's tempting because I could do 100 million extra, but it's totally off strategy. And when you have a clear strategy, so back to like my personal life, for me, that's my faith. Like my core values, underpinned by my religion, my faith, makes so many things clear to me that I think a lot of people wrestle with, including, by the way, just like an outlook on the world. Like, I live in this world and I observe all the crazy stuff that's happening. And I think it is getting more crazy. We could talk about the weather, we could talk about social issues, we could talk about, the economy. It's all nuts. And I think, man, if I didn't have a rock solid faith, rooted in my own experience, I call it, my testimony, I and if I didn't know what's coming, like, I feel kind of like I know the end of the movie. So I'm relaxed a little bit
mm,
about some of the craziness. It's not to say that I'm abdicate responsibility, that I go through life not worrying completely about anything, but it really, really, um, makes it easier for me to deal with some of this volatility and craziness. And again, you don't, unless I tell you about it, you don't know that. You might see me, hopefully, as like a cool head in a time of crisis. I advocate that in my book. I talk about stay cool and be kind. Like, I think under pressure, if you're able to do that, like, that's like a superpower. But a big part of my ability to do that is rooted in my eternal perspective and my faith. And my guess is that a big part of your success, I mean, here you are, top of your game, you have been your whole life, um, to some degree, I imagine, and more importantly, in your real life, as great as you are as a wakeboarder, your real life of being a great father, a great partner, a great person on the earth, I'm guessing faith has a lot to do with it.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's how I wake up, in the morning. Spend time over here in a chair, reading, praying. It's that trajectory that sends me into the right way. And it's kind of, there's so many crazy analogies that I've had in wakeboarding that I coach people with, and that have turned into messages that I share wherever I might be speaking. And
Hmm.
one of
What's
the
your
things,
favorite? Yeah.
gosh, I don't know, but one that's in my head right now that, has to do with how we live like this rather than like this, meaning close-handed versus open-handed. And there's a funny
Mm.
thing that I'll teach people, like when they're wakeboarding, I'm going to give them all sorts of little techniques and things like that. But um, I will joke around and say, "Hey, I'm getting ready to give you something that's kind of technical, and I don't know if it's going to be a little bit too over your head, but you seem like you're going to be able to handle it." But this is when they're about to, like, they're landing something, but they're physically just letting go. Like all they need to do is just hang on. And I've told them, hey, you got it, whatever. I give them encouraging words like, you can do this, just hang on. And I'll say, this is a little technical, so I don't know if it would go over your head, but if on this next one, you just go like this with your hand and don't do this, you're going to land it. And
Like,
they're like,
just don't open your hand.
yeah.
Just hold
Um,
the handle.
so I feel like, um, so often in life, and the older I get, the more that I see that people live in life in this way. And what this is kind of two things. One, it's living holding on to things in a sense of fear.
Mm.
Most people tend to live through fear, and the decisions that they make through fear. They do
Yeah.
their job just enough to keep their job.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's in sometimes selfishness, but selfishness is generally in fear because somebody is going to potentially take something from you, is how that is lived out. But it also can be like a defensive thing, fists, that people go into things aggressively or fighting, and they go in thinking that they're about to step into a fight, or that they're always in a fight. We've been around those people that it's just like, it's uncomfortable, at least for me. And so I find like that's what Jesus teaches in the Bible, is to live like this, like open-handed.
Open-handed.
Um, and so that we're like, in open hands can receive a lot more than closed hands. And so that as long as it's just a place for things to flow through, and it's trying to go into situations of what can I do here rather than what can I get here. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the biggest messages, like in life, is what am I able to do for others, not like in a works-based life, but rather like in an opportunity that I've
Yeah.
been given these things, and how can I share these things.
I love
So
that.
it's to be I think that when we are in the form of, gosh, I even drew it out right here. I'll show you my scribbles, it's bad. um, but it's really, well, it's how we really should be living in a conduit life, like meaning like a pipe
Mm-hmm.
rather than a container. um, I think that things should just kind of flow through us, and so that's why I try to live my life upon being open-handed, in the sense that I want to see what I can do rather than what I can get. Now,
I
there's a
love
time I
that.
gotta make sure that I'm taking care of my family, but I try to see what I can do for my family.
And what's amazing is, I'm sure you would testify to, is the more we focus on what we can do instead of what we can get, of course, somehow the more we get.
Hmm.
And it just happens. And, I'm at a place, I'll be a little bit vulnerable. Look, the unique thing about my situation is most entrepreneurs that have been in this thing for 26 years have taken the company public. They've already banked tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars. And in my case, almost all my chips are totally still on the table. All my net worth is in Lovesac ownership. And it's not because I hope it's not because I'm just clinging on like you describe. It's because I believe in what we're doing, and I'm at a place where I try to really stay focused, and it takes work. It takes effort, like we're talking about on this podcast, on what we're trying to do here. Like, I'm trying to build a brand that's here in 100 years. I'm trying to build a company that will employ tens of thousands of people. I'm trying to, make the most sustainable products in the world. Like, to me, that's very interesting. It's an interesting way to live my life. It's an interesting endeavor. It's hard, it's challenging, it's multifaceted. Even this podcast is part of it, right? Increasing our reach, exposure to people, whatever. It's my exposure to experts like you. What's my point? I'm trying very hard, like you said, to focus on what we're doing here. not what I can get out of it. Now, of course, if it doesn't all fall apart, I will probably get a ton. And by the way, so will many others.
Mhm.
It's just not, I view that as an outcome, not the focus
Byproduct.
and
Yeah,
not the goal.
byproduct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I try to check myself and remain sincere to that. And it's hard because of course, people in my position, my friends expect me to be flying private, buy a jet, do all these other things, vacation with them. I'm like, dude, I'm still in the grind.
Mm.
But not because I think I have to be necessarily, because I want to be.
Mhm.
Because I want to keep developing those wrinkles in my brain. I want to still be challenged. I don't just want to be like golfing and I love wakeboarding, but I don't just want to be wakeboarding. You know what I mean? And so look, living good, however you define it, right? And we all get to define it our own way, but living good takes work. And the best of the good livers make it look easy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because like I'm now kind of going down this new path, and this really isn't like for me. I'm not trying to like. I mean, if I gain some wisdom, but I'm curious just for you because you mentioned you've got a lot of employees,
Yeah.
and I bet that's a really valuable thing to you. And and I don't want to ask the wrong question, but is there that line that like you cross where it's like a sense of weight that I want to continue to be able to provide these people with this employment and opportunity. At the same time, I'm saying it going, you know what? If it doesn't work, then they would go find a new job. Like, but what is that like for you?
I appreciate you asking. Yes, there. It's part of the reason that I like all my chips on the table. If I had found a way to just like take, who knows, 10 million here, 20 million there, whatever off the table. And so it's kind of like I have no risk. It's like whatever happens, whatever, like I'll be all right.
Mm.
It puts me in a very different place from them. And
In
so look,
in their perspective or both, it's probably two
in
sided.
reality,
Yeah.
because reality is the perception that we have of our own conditions, right? So like, in other words, like if I am removed from the pressure of needing to survive, like I need Lovesac to survive, let alone thrive,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Then it's probably pretty likely, like just like when you were dangling from that plane, you needed to hang on. Like you had to hang on.
Yeah.
If you were to let go at some altitude, you're done. Like, and so I'm in a place where I have chosen to leave pretty much all my chips on the table. And
Hmm.
I have to make this work for
Yeah.
both myself and for them.
Yeah.
Where if
Do
I,
they know that? Do they know that?
well, they do now if they're listening. Like
Yeah, but no, but do your employees know that?
no, I don't think so. And
Not that they have to, but what a valuable piece of information.
well, look, I'm not saying this to rub it in anyone's face. You asked me the question. I'm just being honest. Like
Yeah.
it's one reason I like being a public company. Like I can get fired. I'm the founder of this thing, but I'm not a Mark Zuckerberg. I didn't retain all the voting shares. And so what does that mean? It means I have to be awesome, or at least kind of awesome at this job, or I'm out myself. And so, by the way, isn't that what I expect of my employees or my partners? Like they should be awesome or they shouldn't be here. So why should the pressure on them be any different than the pressure on me?
Yeah.
And you could say, well, you have more to lose, Shaun. That's different. You know, or you have more to gain. Listen, all I'm saying is that I like the dynamic that we are all in this together. It keeps me honest. It keeps us in the hunt. And I think, and by the way, I like spending a life where I feel like I'm doing something. Like the products we're going to make can be with people their whole lives. That'll be a great example to many other companies that might do things differently once we gain enough market share that we prove that people really want sustainable stuff. Because it's not because, like when you bought your Sactionals, you probably didn't buy it because it's the most sustainable couch. You probably bought it because it's good for your family and does the job and it has stealth tech or whatever. And that's what we want. right? That's what we want. We want you to want it for that reason. But really, you took thousands of water bottles out of the landfill that are involved in making that fabric. You'll find out, Shaun, if you choose not to purge it from your life, or your wife chooses not to, they'll outlive your children. Your children will be out there on with their own lives. And this crazy, like my oldest Sactionals pieces are older than my daughter, Lucky. They're 17 years old and they're mated with brand new ones. And I'm proud of that. What's my point? My point is I'm trying to do something that I think matters in the world. And that is my, hopefully, life well lived. But I'm telling you, it takes work. And even if I make it look easy, even if I put on my social media, hey, I'm dirt biking again. Hey, I'm wakeboarding again. Hey, I'm hanging out with Shaun Murray, hanging out with celebrities. Gronk was on last week. Mark Cuban the week before. It's all work. Mm-hmm. It's and don't be fooled by it. Understand, we're trying, pros like you try to make it look easy. You're landing a trick, you're looking cash. You might have blown your knee out, but you're trying to keep a straight face.
But we crashed a lot.
Do.
Yeah,
what's that?
We crashed a lot learning, though. It takes a lot of work. It's not the successful ones that teach some of the lessons, but it's the crashes that you say, I'm not going to do that again.
That's right. And I'm on this rant not to lecture anyone. I'm on the rant because if you feel tired, if you feel beleaguered, if you feel like short-changed in life, I'm just here to tell you, man. And you're talking to, people that are at the top of look, I'm at the top of my beanbag game. You're at the top of, it takes work. It may look easy. It may look beautiful, but just keep going, because if you feel that way, if you feel tired, if you feel worn out, if you feel like it's maybe too hard, that's how it should feel. And take comfort in that.
Absolutely. I think that I still have to remind myself, do now well to get through those moments.
Yeah.
To get through those moments.
I love that. Well, let's all strive to be more present, to do now well. And just so grateful. This is such a great conversation. You can follow this icon of our generation, Shaun Murray, on Instagram, ShaunMurray, Shaun Murray with a U on Instagram, and any of the social media channels, YouTube. He's got amazing content, Shaun.Murray on YouTube. See him dangling from a plane. Thank you to the Wizard of Wake, the Legend of Lakes, the American Ninja wakeboarder, Mr. Shaun Murray.
Well, thanks for having me.
And thank you all for listening to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast today. I hope that Shaun and I gave you some great tips to help you shave maybe a little bit off your own 25-year journey. Remember, living good takes work. There is no other way.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.